Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you to the member from Langley East for those questions. I have a number of questions, Honourable Speaker, to build on this theme. I, too, am having a very difficult time understanding how LNG Canada could make a said investment decision with the uncertainty in terms of what is, in fact, cleanest LNG in the world. So my first question to the Minister is she aware of Freeport LNG in the United States?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to the member. I know the member will have had many of these conversations, I'm sure, with the Minister of the Environment as well as he looks at developing the specifics. The specifics aren't being developed or aren't developed as yet, but obviously the Freeport LNG and the coal-fired electricity that they utilize will be part of the range of plants that will be looked at and the indicators that will be developed by the Minister.
Member.
Again, Honourable Speaker, so we're going to define an LNG plant as an LNG plant. We're not defining an LNG plant as some hypothetical production upstream as to where someone gets electricity from or not, because there's a multitude of ways. You can go on the spot market and you can go buy wind power at 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. You can go on the spot market and you can buy coal power at night pretty cheap. You could buy natural gas from Alberta and avoid the carbon tax. The relevant question in defining cleanest LNG in the world is the facility. And as we know, Honourable Speaker, is Freeport LNG uses General Electric compressors to compress the natural gas. So we know under the BC Liberals that they initially signed an agreement with LNG Canada, and I believe it was 8.2 cents a kilowatt hour to get electricity if they move forward. And there was the industrial rate if they actually used electricity in the compression. We also know that the BC NDP basically exempted LNG Canada from the requirement of using electricity in the compression and gave them the same 5.4, I think it is, cents a kilowatt hour industrial rate. We know that we could not today deliver into that industrial rate for the requirement of LNG Canada unless two things are done. One, either we evoked called upon the Columbia River entitlement, or two, we build enhanced capacity. And this government's chosen to build that enhanced capacity through the building of Site C, as opposed to distributed renewable at a fraction of the cost. So we know that the ratepayer is going to end up paying 10 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour for the electricity produced at Site C to sell it to LNG Canada for its other operations at 5.4 cents a kilowatt hour. It's pretty crazy economics. But with that said, even with that, LNG Canada will be using natural gas in the compression. Natural gas, not electricity, natural gas. And that natural gas, Honourable Chair, has been given to them for free, in essence, because of the royalty structure in place, again, by the BC Liberals at the time to incentivize deep wells, which were difficult and were risky back, must be almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago. But now it's applied to 99% with wells, including all shallow wells. So we give them the natural gas, essentially royalty-free, 3% or something ridiculous, to actually use in compression, a crown resource being given away to this company to actually use in the compression. And now we're hearing that we're going to actually exempt them for carbon tax increases above $30. And we are hearing that LNG Canada have actually made a final investment decision. Yet they're doing so under this cloud of uncertainty, which is also, so I come back to the question, the first question here. How is it that the minister can now suggest at all that LNG Canada have any hope to have access to $30 a ton in light of the fact that they are not using electric compression? Because there is no way you can weasel out of any other way but saying they are not the cleanest in the world. How can the minister, other than trying to redefine what an LNG plant is, by assigning coal-fired electricity emissions, hypothetically, by forgetting about the fact that a lot of the gas in the US is conventional, as opposed to unconventional gas up in BC, which has rather much larger fugitive emissions, what is the minister, how can the minister actually stand here and tell this House that there is, LNG Canada has some certainty that they'll make the $30 limit on carbon tax? What other agreements have they signed?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, through you to the member, and I appreciate the information that the member is providing. I know that consultations, as we've talked about, consultations continue to go on. The Minister of the Environment is working on the specifics, and I know the Green Caucus is part of those consultations, as industry are part of those consultations. So certainly I know those discussions will occur. I'm not going to obviously talk about the specifics that the Minister is in the process of developing. That's for the Minister to discuss, and I know there'll be lots of opportunity for those conversations, both in the consultations that will occur, but also in estimates if the member feels there's opportunities there. But to the member's specific question around the agreement and were there additional pieces written into the agreement is the agreement. It is in front of the members. It is in front of the public. These are the measures that we have agreed to. And again, it's LNG Canada's estimates and their estimates that they believe they will fit the criteria of the program, and that's the determination they utilized.
Member.
So it would be a fair question, Honourable Speaker, Chair, to ask this. How are you defining, when I say you, it is the government, not the minister, you, so through you, Honourable Chair, what is an LNG facility for the purpose of calculating emissions? Because we actually have definitions in existing legislation. Are you changing those definitions? Or how is it possible that you could allude to electricity, which has been done, produced through burning of coal? How could you possibly include that in a definition of what an LNG facility is?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, and I refer the member to page 22, the last paragraph, which talks about LNG facilities and talks about the LNG facility will include fugitive emissions, venting, natural gas combustion at the LNG facility, and emissions from electricity supplied to the facility from the British Columbia electrical grid. That's in the agreement, but again, specifics are being developed by the Minister and will be determined as that process continues.
Member.
So how are you going to compare this in LNG Canada in BC to another facility not in BC? Is it also from natural gas supplied by BC? And to what extent is there a requirement? I mean, to actually use gas from BC. There is no requirement in the legislation. We can use gas from Alberta. So to me, there's just nothing defined here. We're actually being asked to take a leap of faith. We're asked to take a leap of faith that, trust us, we know that LNG Canada can meet the $30 a ton exemption because they think they can. We've got no articulation of any rules at all. We've got no mention of electric compression. We've got no mention of where the gas will come from in that calculation. Is it source gas from BC or is a fraction from Alberta? Is it fracked shale gas or is it conventional gas? Is it Horn River gas, which is dry? Is it Montney Play gas, which is wet? Is it gas from the US that's coming up? It's just a grand leap of faith. And so, like the member from Langley East, I cannot believe that LNG Canada signed on to this unless they were given specific certainty that, in fact, the only carbon tax they will pay is the first $30, and everything above that will be exempt. I cannot believe that they signed this. And so I asked the minister this: has the minister at any point, or anyone in her government, assured LNG Canada that all they will pay is $30 a ton of carbon tax? Yes or no?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. No.